Countdown to Halloween, featuring Gregory Miller's Dark Nights and Candlelight, 31 Tiny October Tales. Every night at exactly midnight, a new story will appear on StoryLink Radio's YouTube channel. You'll have 24 hours to listen, then it will disappear and the next one will appear. Plan to catch these each day or you'll miss one. Each story will be 2 to 13 minutes long. If you haven't already, be sure to listen to the introduction to the book right here on this channel. And now, tonight's story from Dark Nights and Candlelight, 31 Tiny October Tales. October 25, the escape. Old Tom Bandersky had run the corn maze at the Autumn Festival for over 40 years. Our small-town miners' fork really drew the crowds those 4 October weekends of the year. Always had, since the corn maze was one of the biggest and best in western Pennsylvania. The share of the profits Tom collected was always welcome, but he enjoyed the maze most because of the families he got to meet and the happiness it always seemed to bring them. That was the best part. That was the part that mattered. The maze grew in his far western field, which he always donated for the cause, and which he tended throughout the growing season with great care, rooting out stalk rot, carefully planning plant density, and even working out with veto power each year's maze pattern with the Miners Fork Autumn Festival Planning Committee. It covered 5 acres, just across the street from the hayride drop-off and a quarter-mile from the main festival grounds. Stationed throughout the paths and dead ends were townies, adults and teens who dressed as ghouls and ghosts and that sort of thing. Spooky, but never so scary they upset the little ones. And then, scattered about were the jack-o'-lanterns. Battery lit now for safety, but Tom didn't think they had the same feel as with the candles. Bats on wires, motion-censored cackling skeletons and scarecrows. Tom loved the scarecrows most. He made them himself, and he chuckled as he posted them up here and there in the days before the festival opened. He'd never thrown a shirt, a sock, or pair of trousers away. They all went into his creation. Hosting the corn maze entrance by day was plenty fine, but the evening hours, with the sun slipping behind the horizon and the autumn night mist descending, were even better. Second only to the hours of full night, when he issued everyone a flashlight and sent them down the dark and claustrophobic paths that would eventually lead back, after an hour or so, to the entrance again, and then on to the fair's nightly bonfire, hot apple cider, and s'mores back at the main grounds. And it was on one such night, just before Halloween, on the very last day of the festival for that oddly cold, notably dark season, that the woman asked for a ticket. She'd pulled directly up to the maze lot in her car, a flashy silver Buick. People seldom skipped the hayride, seldom even knew how to find the maze without it. Odd. And she was by herself. That made Tom take notice, too. What fun was a corn maze by yourself? It was just lonely. Lonely and kind of sad. Nobody ever went in alone. And she was dressed differently than most, at least for a corn maze on a chilly October night. Instead of jeans and a sweater, slacks and a jacket or something similar, she had on high heels and a sharp, smart turquoise blouse. The kind of thing a lady wore to an expensive dinner or some other kind of big night out. And her hair was made up nice and her makeup was picture perfect, but for where tears had obviously smeared it on her lower lashes and a big livid welt the size of a man's hand had taken some off her left cheek. "Miss," said Tom, "can I help?" "1 ticket for the maze," she said, fumbling with her purse. "Why, sure, that's $3, but—" "Is the maze as big as it used to be?" "Huh? Well, I expand it a bit every year, so whenever you were last here, I guess it's bigger still now, yeah." "That's fine, just fine." A wallet emerged from her purse. She unzipped it, and then almost to herself she added, "I can get good and lost." "Ma'am, miss, are you in trouble?" The lady laughed shrilly. "I guess I am, but I'll be fine in there. I used to come here when I was little. I always thought it was magic. It felt magic. Well, we'll see. I love getting lost in it, and now I need to get lost? She eyed the entrance, marked off with hay bales and jack-o'-lanterns. Hell, I'd be happy to get lost in there forever. She counted out 3 singles. I can help, Tom said. You are helping. She handed over the cash. Husband? He said, taking reluctantly. Boyfriend? This time her laugh was almost hysterical. Not for long. Not ever again. Tom had seen this before, more often than he cared to consider. There had been a time in the steady years of his middle age when he would have left it at that. The time had slowly changed Tom. Now nonchalance toward the suffering of others wearied and frustrated him. He had no patience with it. Just tell me what I can do, he said to her. I won't let nobody hurt you. Nobody will, she said. That's over now. But thank you. She grabbed a ticket and with half a dozen quick steps disappeared into the maze, leaving nothing behind but a whiff of expensive perfume. Tom shook his head and then looked after her into the darkness of the maze for a long, long time. What could he do? Little enough now, he supposed. He could call Sheriff Morgan while she was still in there, have him there waiting, so that when she returned together they could maybe persuade her to make a statement and offer up some options. Yeah, but that hardly ever worked. No, it probably wouldn't do. Instead, he would wait alone, wait for her to reemerge and try to talk with her again. Too much pressure would scare her off. He reckoned that right now a single friendly face would do more than a badge. So Tom waited, listening to the screams and laughter from deep in the rows. He waited as children and teenagers emerged, happy and panting, to hitch a hayride back to the fairgrounds. Waited until the moon rose higher in the darkling sky and the silver shadows grew long. He waited until John Wilmer, the hayride driver, tipped his hat and bid him good night, and the fair officially over. The countryside quiet now, save for the rustle of the corn and the distant clack and squeak of rides closing and stall windows sliding down. But the lady never came out. Her silver Buick sat cold and silent, a metallic mound in the midnight moonlight. Tom shivered. A group of half a dozen older kids, still dressed in their fright costumes but with masks now tucked under their arms, emerged, looking tired and ready for sleep. Tom peeled off 620s and passed them out. You guys checked the whole maze before you packed it in? Why, sure, Mr. Bando, we always do, said Mark Simmons. It's empty. Everyone gone. Well, see you next year then, said Tom, nodding. Hey, and thanks again for all the good work, you guys. They disappeared down the lane. Now Tom would go in. He did every night, always needing to make sure that everything was in order, everything turned off, and everyone gone, just in case his staff had forgotten something, or skipped something, or overlooked something, or someone. Every night from midnight to 1, it was just him in the darkened maze, his little night kingdom. To some it might have seemed a lonely duty, a patrolling a fun house now empty and turned off, the life gone, the magic. The magic. Hadn't the lady mentioned magic? The magic dispelled. And it was. But he enjoyed it just the same. This time, though, he felt an unfamiliar prickle of nerves. This time, though, he had every reason to. He came across it in one of the farthest, darkest corners of the maze, in the middle of a half-hidden, easily overlooked dead end. At first, Tom thought the lady had killed herself, ended her life in some bizarre and grotesque fashion. But then he realized what he was really looking at. The scarecrow tied to the pole was different from any he had ever made, but that was still inarguably what it was. His flashlight revealed a face of pale, cracked porcelain and subtle paint. Its limbs were of tightly wound straw and rushes. Its eyes stared down at him like a mirrored glass, and it was wearing high heels and a sharp, smart turquoise blouse. The kind of thing a lady wore to an expensive dinner or some other kind of big night out. A feeling of creeping, almost intangible dread settled upon him like a clammy dew. His heart quickened. A thin moan escaped his throat. Suddenly this dark, far isolated corner of his dark, far isolated field was the last place Tom wanted to be. For the first time since his childhood, long decades before, Tom Bandersky ran in fear. On the way out, at first far behind, but soon gaining ground, he heard the tramp of footsteps, the rustle of corn, and laughter, hollow, distorted, but inarguably real. That in one word. It is that word, more than anything else, that has left Tom Bandersky in a state of uncertainty about the future of his famous Miners Fork Autumn Festival corn maze. The police interviews are long over, the search party is long gone, the silver Buick long towed away, and the public interest in the missing person long faded, and the stalks of the maze itself long cut. But that one word, spoken just inches from his ear as he staggered out of the maze on the verge of nervous collapse, is still vivid, fresh, and very much with him. Magic. The cold wind had whispered in the voice of the woman. You've just heard tonight's story from Dark Nights and Candlelight, 31 Tiny October Tales from author Gregory Miller. You can get this book right now on Amazon at the on-screen link, and Kindle Unlimited users can borrow a copy of the book for free. You can learn more about Gregory Miller and his many amazing books and projects at his website, On Screen. If you have not already, be sure to listen to our event video here and visit our event website to learn all about our upcoming events. Remember to come back after midnight for our next tale. Oh, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button for StoryLink Radio.